Hey, welcome back to you guys. Nice to see everyone here. We're going to continue on with our course, helping you guys to understand breathing mindfulness meditation, because this is a great time to help you guys understand the ins and outs of this. And just like always, you guys are welcome to ask any and all questions. We have the microphones here. And for anybody online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom, and I'll be able to see those. So let me just switch over to some visual aids here. Okay. So first, let's just talk about some meditation basics to be able to kind of help you guys get established with what it is I'm going to be sharing, because different people think about meditation in different ways, and how you think about meditation is up to you. But at least when I use the word meditation, if I start off with this definition, you guys will understand what it is that I'm describing. When I talk about meditation, this is a technique to actively train the mind through dedicated, independent, purposeful training sessions where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities of the mind and or cultivating wholesome qualities of the mind in the positions of seated, lying, standing, or walking. So it's a dedicated, active, purposeful training session. You're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities and cultivating certain wholesome qualities. And just as important as it is to talk about what meditation is, it's helpful to know what meditation is not. Because sometimes people might think that going driving is meditating, or going to the gym, or gardening, or walking the dog. Someone might say, oh, honey, I'm going to go walk the dog and meditate. Well, when I get to the point where I share with you guys that it's important to meditate 2 or 3 times a day for 30 minutes, if you just went and walked the dog 2 or 3 times a day for 30 minutes and you thought you were meditating, you're not going to get to enlightenment that way. So it's important to keep in mind what meditation is it's this dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities and cultivating certain wholesome qualities. And while you might do these other things like gardening and walking the dog and things like that, it's up to you, but just be sure you don't consider those things to be meditation. Then it's going to be important for you to have a meditation teacher. And whether you consider that person to be me or someone else, it's totally up to you to make a decision for yourself. But I encourage you to have somebody that can be your teacher, because nowadays we kind of live in a self-service environment. Whereas if you've never baked a cake before and you would like to learn to bake a cake, you would just probably get on the internet, look at a YouTube video, and you'd be able to bake a cake, right? Well, getting to enlightenment isn't that way. You're going to need teachers and guides. There's only one type of person that would be able to get to enlightenment without the help of teachers or guides, and that would be an actual Buddha. And there's oftentimes people who don't understand that you need teachers to be able to help you in order to progress to enlightenment because of our self-service environment that we're in. And people might be online or reading books and watching videos and thinking that they can get to enlightenment. I'll tell you guys one story of this so you guys will see how important this is. That there was a student many, many years ago that he was trying to get to enlightenment on his own. And there's plenty of people out there that are doing this right now too. But there was this one particular person who he was actually a practicing doctor in his country. And so this was an educated person, right? He was very wise about certain things with medical health and things like this. So he was off reading books, watching videos, doing things like this, trying to train his mind to get to enlightenment. And after about 2 years of doing this, he got to the point where he was sleeping 23 hours a day. He wasn't able to go to work any longer. He was having depression and suicidal thoughts, wanting to kill himself. He was having obsessive thoughts. His relationship with his fiancée was falling apart. He was having all kinds of difficulties. And for one reason or another, he decided he was going to get help. And he reached out to me and he found me on the internet and he said, hey, I need your help. And I started talking to him and finding out what was going on. And I was helping him the best I could from his country. I was living in Thailand. But eventually I just said, this is a really tough case. You're going to need to come to Thailand. I can't help you online any longer. So he ended up coming to Thailand and he was there for a little bit and did some training. And then he trained when he went home as well. Eventually he worked his way out of those problems where he didn't have the obsessive thoughts anymore. He wasn't sleeping 23 hours a day. He got back to work. He doesn't have suicidal thoughts. He's all fine. But for 4 to 6 years, his life was very miserable. His relationship with his fiance did fall apart. He didn't go forward with that relationship. But all of this is all from his unwise decision to try to get to enlightenment by himself. And he just didn't understand that. He didn't know that that's not possible. Now, I don't suspect that you'll ever have any of these problems because it's not the meditation that caused this. It was him trying to piece together from all these different teachers. He was trying to piece together all these different teachings to be able to train his mind, and it kind of imploded on itself. So if you have a teacher, there's going to be times where you're training your mind and that person is guiding you on how to be able to do that. And you're going to need to reach out and ask questions and say, hey, teacher, I'm experiencing this in meditation. What should I do? Is this normal? And if what you get back from your teacher is, yeah, that's normal, keep going, that can give you some reassurance and confidence that you're heading in the right direction. So I encourage you to have a teacher. That you don't necessarily need to talk with this person at any given schedule or frequency, but just have someone that you feel like you have contact with and you can reach out to that person and they're there to be able to help you if you need help, because you're going to need help along the way and you're going to need to ask questions. So just be sure you have somebody that you can reach out to in that situation. There's 4 positions to meditate in that the Buddha taught, because your body can't be in the same position permanently. There's seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you would learn these different positions at different times. It's like assembling a tool belt. And I'm going to introduce them to you, and I'm going to share with you how I've used them in the past. But remember, you're not interested in believing the teachings that I'm sharing with you guys. You guys are going to need to take these positions and use them in your own way and see how do they work best for you. But I'll give you some pointers and some guidance of how I use them. So the seated position is kind of like the go-to position. A lot of times people are learning and they're doing a lot of their meditation in the seated position. I would say probably a good 80-90% of the meditation I've done has been in the seated position. You can sit on the floor, you can sit in a chair, on a bench, a sofa, or a wheelchair. You can really sit however you like. Some people like to sit with their legs crossed on the floor with a cushion under their rear. This can oftentimes be comfortable, but you can also sit in a chair with your feet on the floor or lightly crossed at the ankles. You can even sit cross-legged in a chair as well. So you can sit however you like. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use it, but it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way. There's other options here as well. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or their knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people just rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you can put your hands and arms wherever you like. It's helpful if the body, the upper body, is erect with the sternum up and the shoulders back. It'll help keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. Whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you're real rigid, the mind can be overactive or uptight. So remember, it's a dedicated, active, purposeful training session. So you'd like the mind to be attentive and alert during your meditation, and having the sternum up and the shoulders back will help you to do that. It'll also make it easy for you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose, not only keeping your mind attentive and alert, but making it easy to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. But while you're in the seated position, you might notice that you have aches and pains in the body. And that's where lying position comes in. That you could try to shift in that seated position to get your back feeling better, to get your hips feeling better, or whatever you need to do. You can do that. You don't need to just stay frozen in a position. You can actually adjust your position, or you can just change. You can do lying, where you lie on the floor, face up, put your arms out to the side. I've even used this in a hospital bed before because I was hooked up to an IV and I couldn't actually sit or anything. So I just laid in the hospital bed and meditated from there. So lying position is really helpful if you're noticing aches and pains in the body because all the muscles are relaxed. But in the seated and lying position, you sometimes notice that you fall asleep and you're getting drowsy. That's where the standing and walking position comes in. And when you stand up, you stand with your feet at shoulder width with your arms clasped in front or on the side or behind you. And now this will kind of help invigorate the mind. So you can use it for that purpose. I've also used it if I was standing at a bus stop waiting for a bus and I knew that it was going to be 10, 15 minutes before the bus came. I didn't consider this one of my primary meditations. It was just like a little touch up, but I used it in that situation. Or I've been in government lines before, maybe waiting for a driver's license or to vote or something like that. And now you've got this line that only moves once every 5 minutes or something like that, or once every 10 minutes, and you can get a little bit of meditation in while you're standing there. The walking position is helpful if you're noticing that you're falling asleep or if your mind's overactive. And the last thing you're thinking about is being still and in one place. So tomorrow afternoon, I'm going to teach you walking meditation, and we're going to do it here. We're going to be walking. It's very intentional walking. Um, it's not just walking down the street. Although it's so nice, we actually could probably do it outside. or outside on the patio or something like that. You can do it outside, but it's not just, casually walking through the neighborhood. It's very intentional walking. So I'll teach that to you guys tomorrow. So these are the 4 positions and all the meditation basics. Is there anything you guys would like to ask here with these questions or with these teachings?
In the walking position, are you still focusing on the sorry, not in the walking, in the standing position, you're still focusing on the breath, or you're just looking at the point on the floor in front of you?
So in the seated, lying, and standing, what you're doing with the mind is exactly the same. The eyes are closed and you're focused on the breath. And anytime the mind moves off, you cut it off and let it go and come back. So that's the seated, lying, and standing. But the walking position, you're doing it through the eyes rather than focused on the breath. It's just a different body position because you need the body to be comfortable. You're going to see here, let me share this with you guys. The mind is the boss and the body is the employee. What I mean by that is whatever the body's doing, it's just following along with the boss. The boss is the one that's in charge. That's the mind. So in order to get to the boss to train it, you need to go through the employee, right? You can't just walk right in and talk to the boss. You got to go through the employees in order to be able to get to the boss. So you'd like the body to be comfortable. That's why you have these different positions, is that you need the body to be comfortable so that you can go see the boss and train the boss. Whereas if the employees are painful, you're not going to be able to go see the boss. Or if they're luxurious, you're not going to be able to go see the boss. Because sometimes if you go learn meditation, people will tell you that if you experience pain, just breathe through it. This is very unwise, right? Because that pain is there telling you, hey, there's something wrong here with your knee or your hip. That's an indication to you that something's not feeling right. And you would be unwise to just sit there and breathe through that. What people are thinking is that if you cause physical pain to the body and your mind can overcome that, that you can get to enlightenment. And the Buddha already taught us that this is not the way to get to enlightenment. He was hanging himself upside down from trees. He was laying on beds of nails. He was piercing his body with metal implements. He was starving himself. And he realized that this is not what leads to enlightenment. So today you have people that come from that same type of thinking and they don't understand the Buddha's life story and what he did. So they will teach you to breathe through the pain. So that's why you have these different positions. So if you're noticing pain or you're falling asleep or things like this, you can use these different positions to help you. Okay, so the mind is the boss, the body is the employee. When you study the original words of the Buddha on meditation, because we have his words and you can see exactly what he was teaching about meditation, he talks about setting up mindfulness in front of you before you start meditating. This is a regular thing that he will say. He will instruct you in meditation and he will say, set up mindfulness in front of you before you start meditating. Well, now you know a little bit about what mindfulness is, which is awareness of mind, right? So you would like to have some awareness of mind before you meditate. You're not interested in just plopping down into meditation and starting to meditate because it's going to take you 5, 10, 15 minutes to start getting benefit. But if you can bring some awareness to your mind before meditating, that's going to actually help you to actually do the meditation and experience improvement during your meditation. So that's why I use chanting. The chanting helps to bring awareness to the mind as you're easing into meditation. You could use chanting if you like, but if you're not using chanting, just be sure you do something to kind of gather your awareness of mind as you're easing into the meditation. Then, in terms of your time, frequency, and schedule of meditation, let me ask you guys a question. Can you meditate at exactly the same time every day? No. Why? Yeah, because of impermanence. It's just not possible, right? So if you try to set up on your schedule that you're going to meditate at 8 a.m. every day, I can tell you that's not going to happen. Right? There were times where I was meditating and my son walked in and said, "Hey, Dad, I need you to take me to school." I said, "I thought your mom was taking you to school today." He said, "Yeah, me too, but she's gone. I don't know where she's at. I need you to take me to school." I was like, "All right, well, I guess I'm taking you to school." Right? So if you're holding on to meditation and you're clinging and craving to meditate at exactly the same time every day, you'll be annoyed and frustrated when these kinds of things happen. So don't sabotage your ability to be successful with meditation. Instead, meditate when the Buddha meditated it, because he meditated 3 times a day, morning, midday, and evening. He didn't meditate at exactly the same time every day. We know that because of impermanence, but we also know that because of some other things. There's some people in the world that will tell you that you have to meditate at 3:30 a.m. every single day. And that's the best time to meditate. And you're going to get the best benefit and the most benefit at 3:30 a.m. every day. Well, I can assure you that there's nothing special going on at 3:30 a.m. that's going to make your meditation any better or any worse by meditating at 3:30 a.m. And I know that it's possible to get to enlightenment without meditating at 3:30 a.m. every day, because the Buddha didn't meditate at 3:30 a.m. And the reason why I know that is because they didn't have watches. They weren't invented until well after his lifetime. So sometimes people come up with things today that are going to mislead you. And if you just believe these things without actually thinking it through yourself, then you're going to be misled into a certain direction. So the Buddha meditated 3 times. We see it in his teachings. They say he meditated morning, midday, and evening, because he didn't have the ability to take an exact time. And he wouldn't have meditated exactly the same time anyway, because that would be permanence and it's impossible. So I suggest you set up these anchor points for yourself that you meditate 2 or 3 times a day, morning, midday, and evening. And if you're meditating in the morning, it's kind of nice because your day hasn't got started yet. People aren't ringing your phone. And then as you're going to sleep at night, people are kind of winding down, and you can usually find some time for yourself, right? So don't feel like you have to meditate at exactly the same time. If you're going to meditate in the evening, it's usually best to do that prior to your mind becoming sleepy. So if you go to bed at 10, you'd like to be meditating probably 9:15 or something like that. But that doesn't mean you couldn't meditate at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. You could. It's just that if you're going to meditate close to bedtime, do it at a time when the mind's attentive and alert, because this is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session, and you need your mind to be attentive and alert. So 2 or 3 sessions per day, building up to 30 minutes, understanding it can take you 6 months, a year, even 2 years to build up to this. I don't suggest that you use an alarm, because one of 2 things are going to happen if you use an alarm. You're going to set an alarm and you're going to be meditating and you're going to be thinking, is it time yet? Is it time yet? Is it time yet? Is it time yet? This is the mind craving, right? And you're trying to get rid of that. So you would like to not set your alarm if you don't need to. Or you're going to be deep in meditation, getting all kinds of benefit. Man, I shouldn't have set the alarm, right? So if you don't need an alarm, it's best to not set one. Like maybe in the evenings or the weekend, you don't need an alarm and just don't use one. But there's going to be some situations where you might need one. Maybe you only have 20 minutes to meditate, because if you don't get in the car and go to work, you're going to be late, and this is going to produce unwholesome karma for you. So if you need an alarm, use it. But in most situations where you don't need one, it's best to not do it. What you would like to do to be able to see that you're meditating 30 minutes per session is about once a week, check in on your time. So before you start meditating, look at your clock. Maybe it's 9 a.m. and now you meditate. And then when you're done, you look at the clock again and you see it's 9:15. So now you know that, okay, you meditated for 15 minutes. Now just gradually expand that more and more. What you're going to notice is the frequency of your meditation is more important than the duration. So if it's a matter of one meditation for 30 minutes or 2 for 15, the 2 for 15 is going to be more impactful. So wherever you start is where you start. When I first started, it was like 1 minute. That's all I could actually do, is meditate for just 1 minute. So if that's what it is, then that's what you do. Just meditate 1 minute, 2 or 3 times a day, and then just gradually expand that, or 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and then gradually expand that. And that's how you build up your meditation practice. If you notice sleepiness during your meditation, you kind of have 2 options here. Is one, you could switch to the walking position. That's an option. But the second thing is just get some sleep. Your mind needs some sleep. You're dozing off during the meditation. You need some more sleep. You're not getting enough sleep. So get some sleep and then meditate when you wake up. Okay. What you might notice with the sleepiness is not only during meditation, but outside of meditation, you might notice you're more sleepy when you first start meditating, because your mind is starting to do this work that it's not used to. Meditation is kind of like exercising the mind. It's kind of like taking your mind to the gym. And if you hadn't been to the gym for many, many years and you started working out in the gym, you'd probably be pretty sleepy for a while, for several weeks and months from having worked out in the gym. So your mind is the same way that you're exercising the mind. And you might notice a period of time where you're real sleepy, and that you'll overcome that, and eventually you'll get past it. You might notice physical sensations during your meditation. What I mean by that is like itching and scratching, right? Not the bodily sensations associated with the four foundations of mindfulness, but the itching and scratching. If you're meditating and you're noticing an itch or a scratch, if you can avoid scratching it, just don't scratch it. But sometimes the itch, it's just urging. You're just so strong in your mind. You just have this urge to scratch. This is because the mind is craving permanent comfort of the body. So if you're 5 seconds into this, 10 seconds into this, and you just feel that urge to scratch, okay, go ahead and itch. And then on the next one, try to make it a little bit longer. Try to make it 12 seconds or 15 seconds. And then a longer. And eventually you'll get to the point where your mind doesn't have that urge anymore. That itch is going to arise, it's going to change, and it's going to fade away. It's impermanent. So you're going to need to gradually build this up where you don't feel this overwhelming urge to itch or scratch during your meditation. Then you might notice visual stimulation during your meditation. What I mean by this is sometimes I get emails or phone calls. People say that they're seeing green or purple, or they're seeing certain images or white lights during their meditation. And sometimes people say, David, I saw green. Does that mean I'm going to get rich? Or I saw the color purple. Does that mean my boyfriend or girlfriend's going to come back to me? What does that mean? That's not what any of that means. I'll explain to you what is going on so that you'll understand. And then if these things are happening to you, you'll have a better understanding. So while you're meditating, you're training the mind, which is a non-physical thing. Then there's something called the brain, which is the physical organ. It's part of the body, right? But you're training the mind. And there's a connection between these two things. They're not the same thing. So as you're training your mind and you're cleaning up the mind, it has an effect on the brain, and the physical structures of the brain are actually changing. Sight is occurring inside the brain. Your eye is just a lens that's bringing in light, and the sight is occurring inside the brain. So that's the reason why when your eyes are closed, you can still see things. You still see images and stuff like that because sight is occurring inside your brain. So when you're training the mind and the physical structures of the brain are changing, this is where you're seeing green or purple or white or things like this because the physical structures of the brain are changing. There's scientists and doctors that are researching this nowadays. They call it neuroplasticity, that the brain has the ability to physically change shape. And they're coming back with all kinds of interesting research. So you might notice these colors. It doesn't mean anything other than the physical structures of the brain are changing. And what the doctors are seeing is that once you're meditating for extended periods of time, that these physical structures of the brain are changing in a positive direction. It's actually beneficial. And once you experience a certain amount of changes, your brain never goes back to being the way it was before. So you might notice these colors and stuff like this, and this is really helpful for you. I used to actually walk around with headaches. I used to get migraine headaches about at least 3 times a week, sometimes more. And I would even vomit sometimes. They were so strong. I used to walk around with a lot of pressure in my skull. But after training my mind with these teachings, I don't have that any longer. I actually got to a point where there were sometimes I could hear the physical structures in the brain changing while I was meditating. It was like, and I could feel the release of the pressure inside the skull. So you might have these kinds of experiences and just understand that it's normal and that there's nothing special. You're not a special person. Sometimes people think that, they're a special person now because, they saw all these colors in meditation and they're better than everybody else. But this is just the mind's conceit. So it wouldn't be wise to think of it that way. And then lastly, sometimes people have been taught to meditate with external stimulus like music or beads or incense or a certain candle or things like this, maybe a phone app. If that's what you've been meditating with now, that's okay. That's where you're at now. But what I would encourage you to do is strip that stuff away because there's only 3 things that you actually need to meditate. And you'll have these 3 things with you at all times: the body, the mind, and the breath. These are the only 3 things that you ever need is the body, the mind, and the breath. And you'll have these 3 things with you all the way until your death. But if your mind is attached to meditating with music or a phone app or a candle, that means you can't meditate anywhere, anytime. You would like to get to the point where you can meditate anywhere, anytime. Because if you're in a nice park someday and you're walking through the park and the sun's shining. It's glistening off of the lake. The birds are chirping. You see butterflies flying around. You're like, oh, wow, it'd be really great to meditate here. Oh, I don't have my candle with me. I can't meditate. Or maybe you're like deep in the jungle in some remote trekking tour and you're wanting to meditate and you're interested to meditate and you sit down to meditate and you're like, oh, my phone app doesn't work. I can't meditate, right? So if your mind is attached to meditating with any of these external things, you can't meditate anywhere, anytime. So you would like to get to the point where you can meditate anywhere, anytime. So if you're meditating with these things now, that's what got you to where you are, but you can slowly strip these things away. So if you are meditating with music now, I would suggest that you do one session with it, one session without it, one session with it, one session without it. Do that for like a week or so. Then do one session with it, 2 or 3 without. One session with it, 2 or 3 without. Do that for a week or so. Then one session with it, 3, 4, 5, 6 without it, right? Because your mind craves permanence, meaning it doesn't like impermanence. When you start making changes to your life, your mind doesn't like it. So you'd like to make these little incremental changes that your mind almost doesn't recognize what it is that you're doing. And you can do that with your meditation practice. Whenever you're bringing in something wholesome into your life, or you're trying to get rid of something that's unwholesome, if you do little incremental changes like this is actually much better for your mind. It'll be a more sustainable change. So for example, if somebody was smoking cigarettes now, I wouldn't suggest for them to go cold turkey. I would say, well, if you're smoking 20 per day, go down to 18 for like a week or two. And then when you're comfortable with that, go down to 15 for a week or two. And then go down to 12 and gradually go like this. So when you're getting rid of something unwholesome or you're bringing in something wholesome into your life, do it gradually like this. And it's a more sustainable change for you. So if you're trying to get rid of any kind of external stimulus, you can just do this gradually so your mind's not shaken up so much by it. So any questions on any of this? Yep.
Yeah, okay. So I have a question. I heard multiple of my friends, they after they join like the long term or during like the long term meditation retreat, they have like a kind of a feeling that the self is kind of or require themselves integrated or merged with
I would have to talk to them because oftentimes people's minds are conditioned to think that they're experiencing a particular thing, when in reality, it's maybe just more focus, more concentration, more awareness of mind. There's nothing special about a retreat that's going to produce that for you. In fact, the Buddha taught that when you're first getting started, it's unwise to go away in seclusion like that. That I don't suggest you do that early on in your development on the path. It's better to learn amongst a community of people like this rather than going off into any kind of retreat environment and stuff like that. You're welcome. Okay, so now I'm going to share with you some words of the Buddha on meditation, because there's tons of different meditations that are out there in the world, hundreds, if not thousands of meditations. And if you didn't understand what the Buddha actually taught on meditation, you might actually mislead yourself by going out there and trying to learn all these different meditations, because people will tell you, oh, this came from the Buddha. But until you actually see it for yourself in his original teachings, you don't necessarily know that that's the case. This is where the Buddha is introducing his 4 meditations. He only ever taught 4 meditations. That's it. He never taught anything else other than this for meditation. So prior to this, he was teaching his students about certain things that they needed to be able to do in order to get to enlightenment. Then he gets to this teaching. He says, having based himself on these 5 things, the things that they just taught, the monk should develop further another 4 things. The perception of unattractiveness of the body should be developed to abandon lust. This is a meditation to eliminate sexual craving. If you have a craving for sexual pleasure, you can actually eliminate that through meditation. Loving kindness should be developed to abandon ill will. This is a meditation I'm going to teach next weekend that's going to help you eliminate anger, hatred, and ill will and all the lesser versions, like frustration, agitation, annoyance. By the time you get to enlightenment, you won't even have the slightest dislike towards another person. Right now, if you like certain people and then you dislike others, you might think that dislike is coming from them, but it's actually coming from your own mind. You have a craving for everybody to do things this way. And when they do it this way, you like them. But when they don't do it that way, you dislike them. So you can actually train your mind to not do that anymore, where you can have love and kindness for all beings. So I'm going to teach that next weekend. Then there's mindfulness of breathing. Breathing mindfulness meditation should be developed to cut off thoughts, where you're cutting off and letting go, cutting off and letting go. So that's what we're focused on in this course. And then the perception of impermanence should be developed to eradicate the conceit, I am, which when one perceives impermanence, the perception of non-self is stabilized. One who perceives non-self eradicates the conceit, I am, which is nibbana or enlightenment in this very life. This is a meditation to help you realize non-self. So what I've done on this next slide is I've taken each of these meditations and I've showing you the unwholesome qualities that you're eliminating and the wholesome qualities that you're cultivating. Because as I shared with you, meditation is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities and cultivating certain wholesome qualities. And this chart is helping you to be able to see that. So we're going to be focused on breathing mindfulness meditation, which is helping you eliminate the craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, the cause of your discontentedness. That's what the unwholesome quality is that you're eliminating. Then you're cultivating the wholesome quality of mindfulness or awareness of mind and concentration. So this is what you're really focused on to get started when you first develop your meditation practice. The Buddha prioritized this meditation over all the other meditations that he taught. You're going to need these others, but the first one is the one that you really would like to focus on and get started with. So that's why we're starting with that for our foundational course here. So here's some more words from the Buddha on meditation. He says, a pot without a stand is easy to tip over. A pot without a stand is easy to tip over. The pot is your mind. The stand is your meditation practice. A mind without a meditation practice is easy to become discontent. That's what he's saying. When you're meditating, you're making your stand wider and wider and wider. So it's harder and harder to tip over the pot, right? Here's a teaching from the Buddha where he's talking about essentially the goal or the purpose of breathing mindfulness meditation. Monks, there is one thing that when developed and cultivated leads exclusively to liberation, to freedom from strong feelings, to elimination, to peace, to direct knowledge or experience, to enlightenment, to nibbana. What is that one thing? Mindfulness of breathing, breathing mindfulness meditation. This is that one thing that when developed and cultivated leads exclusively to liberation, to freedom from strong feelings, to elimination, to peace, to direct knowledge, experience, to enlightenment, to nibbana. So this is the Buddha saying that this meditation has one goal. It has one purpose to be able to get you to enlightenment. He's not saying you only need meditation in order to get to enlightenment, because otherwise he would have just taught meditation and that's it. But we have 45 volumes of books that are this thick of all of his teachings. So it's kind of like saying your car, it leads to one thing, which is transportation. That's the purpose of this car, is it leads to transportation. But you need more than transportation in your life in order to be able to sustain your life. So it's the same thing here. It's like this meditation, it leads to one thing, which is enlightenment, to peace, to joy, to this enlightened mental state. But you're going to need more than just meditation than to be able to get to this enlightened mental state. But just understand there's one purpose for this meditation, is to get you to enlightenment, because it's helping you to eliminate the underlying cause of discontent feelings. Enlightenment is to eliminate your discontent feelings. This meditation is helping you to eliminate the underlying cause, which is craving, desire, attachment. Okay? So now I'll just kind of share with you guys how to do this. Even though we've done it a few times together as part of this course, this is what you're actually doing. You're focused on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming in or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. That's your post. That's your pillar. You're anchoring your mind to that. And then anytime the mind pulls off of that, you yank it back to that post or that pillar, the breath. The goal of this meditation isn't to eliminate your thoughts. Sometimes that's what people think because of the guidance and the directions here. The goal is to notice your thoughts sooner and sooner and cut them off and let them go easier and easier. Even an enlightened being has thoughts during their meditation. The difference is that an unenlightened being, they'll have a bombardment of thoughts. It'll be like thought, 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 thought. Or you'll have a thought and you'll follow it for a period of time. And then 2 or 3 minutes down the road, you're like, oh yeah, that's right, I'm meditating. And now you bring your mind back to the breath. Where an enlightened being, they'll have a thought, they'll notice it, cut it off, let it go, come back to the breath, and then there'll be quietness and stillness between their thoughts. And this is what an enlightened being is experiencing. So you're going to have thoughts during your meditation, but you would like to notice them sooner and sooner and cut them off and let them go easier and easier. You're building this internal mechanism to be able to see and be aware of your thoughts and let them go easier and easier. So in meditation, you're cutting off anything and everything that's coming up, right? Whether it's a wholesome thought or an unwholesome thought, you're cutting off everything because you're exercising the mind. You're building that internal mechanism in your mind to cut off and let go. But in your day-to-day life, when you're going about your day, you only cut off the unwholesome thoughts, right? This is like a professional athlete. Like I could be a pole vaulter and I could go into the gym and I'm doing weight training, cardiovascular training, agility training. It looks very different than my sport of pole vaulting. And then when I go do my sport, it looks very different. So it's the same thing here, is that in your meditation, you're cutting off everything and anything, but in your day-to-day life, you're only cutting off the unwholesome thoughts. So if you have a thought that you'd like to call up your mom and invite her to dinner and take her out for some food, you don't need to cut that off in your day-to-day life. If it comes up in meditation, cut it off because you're training your mind. But in day-to-day life, yeah, call her up, give her a call, see what she's doing, right? If you're in your day-to-day life and you're thinking about punching your boss in the face, cut that off. It's going to produce unwholesome results for you, right? So you would like to cut off all the unwholesome thoughts that are coming up in your mind, right? So this is how you can use this meditation. What it's doing is it's building qualities for you that you then use throughout your day. You're using the mindfulness, awareness of mind, and the concentration all throughout your day. And you're cutting off and letting go and cutting off and letting go. So the meditation is building these qualities that you then practice all throughout your day. So any questions on this? No questions? Okay. So one more thing, and then I'll share with you guys what we can do after that if you like. These are some more words from the Buddha. He says, meditate, monks. Do not be complacent, lest you regret it later. This is my instruction to you. So this is about the only thing you'll ever get from the Buddha, where he's kind of like, yeah, go do something, right? Because he's not trying to convince you to do anything. He's not trying to force you to do anything. He's already gotten to peace. He's already gotten to joy. He's just helping you to understand how he did it, if you're interested in learning how to do it. But this is him saying like, yeah, don't be complacent because you're going to regret it. When you're feeling guilt and shame and bored and stressed and having anxiety, you're going to regret having not meditated. So he's encouraging you to not stop meditating. And that's why I say never give up. Don't allow your mind to become complacent, because giving up on your meditation practice is basically relegating yourself to anger and sadness and stress and anxiety for the rest of your life, because you're not going to get rid of that stuff any other way than training your mind through these teachings. So if you give up on your meditation practice, it's like, well, oh, well, I'm just going to be angry the rest of my life, right? That's no way to live life. Or, oh, well, I'm just going to be stressed and have anxiety for the rest of my life. That's not a good way to live life. So I encourage you to apply effort and energy towards growing and developing, and don't ever give up on your meditation practice. If you skip meditation here or there, it's understandable, right? Your meditation practice is impermanent too. If you use the recommendation that I shared, which is 2 or 3 sessions per day, let's just go with the 2 per day. If you multiply that out over a 30-day month, you're meditating about 60 times. Well, I can tell you right now that you're probably not going to get 60 meditations in, right? Especially when you first start. And even when you're actually doing this long term, because of impermanence, you're not going to always get 60 meditations. So your enlightenment isn't going to be determined on whether you miss meditation today or not. The enlightenment is going to be determined why, if you miss meditation today, what do you do next? Do you allow that to be 1 week, 1 month, 1 year that you're not meditating? Yeah, you're not going to get to enlightenment. But if you're like, whoa, I missed meditation this morning, I better get right back on that, right? So if you're meditating 52, 54, 56 times a month, you're making your way to enlightenment. You'll make your way there. You're gradually progressing towards it. So you don't have to put this pressure on yourself to meditate 60 times every single month, right? Because it's just not going to happen. But 2 or 3 times a day, gradually build this up over the next 6 months, a year, 2 years, and you'll see that your condition of your mind is gradually improving. And that's where you also are going to need to implement these other teachings, that it's not just meditation. The Buddha didn't sit under a tree, meditate, and got to enlightenment. Yes, he started meditating, and that was an important part of his practice. But as you see, that there's other components to the Eightfold Path. You could be, let's just say, even though this is impossible, let's just say somebody could meditate for 23 hours a day, and then they went out into the world and they were bitter and harsh and hostile with people through their intentions, their speech, and their actions. You're not anywhere close to enlightenment, being bitter and harsh and hostile with people, right? So it doesn't matter how much you meditate. If you're not practicing things like right intention, right speech, right action, and all these other things, you're not going to experience enlightenment. So you need meditation, and you can't meditate your way to enlightenment, but you can't get to enlightenment without meditation either. So you're going to need this meditation, but don't feel like you're going to just meditate your way. You're going to need other things as well. Sometimes you go into some environments and they're teaching you to meditate 6, 8, 10, 12 hours a day. This is not possible. You can't sustain that level of meditation all throughout your life. But if you meditate 2 or 3 times a day for 30 minutes, you'll get your way to enlightenment. I can count on 1, maybe 2 hands that I've meditated more than 30 minutes in my entire life. That I've meditated over 30 minutes in some situations, but not more than about 5 or 10 times. I haven't meditated more than that over 30 minutes. All my meditations are right around that time frame. And I know that that is what you need to be able to make your way to enlightenment. Okay, so any questions on any of this? No questions? Okay, so we're scheduled to actually end at 3:30, which now is 3:15. So what we could do is we could either just end class here and, we'll see you tomorrow kind of thing. Or if you guys would like to do some meditation, we could do some meditation together. And not everybody needs to make the same decision. Everybody can have a different decision, and that's okay because that's impermanence. So let me just see, how many of you guys are interested in actually meditating? Okay. Oh, everybody. Okay. So I'll meditate with you guys then. Because if you guys weren't interested in meditating, then I was just going to say goodbye. Okay. All right. So we'll do the same thing. I'm going to do chanting to ease in. Then I'll tell you what. How about if I don't give you guys guidance this afternoon? Would you guys be okay if I didn't guide you? I'll just do the chanting, and then we go into the meditation. You focus on the breath, and whenever the mind moves off the breath, you cut that off and let it go and come back to the breath, because you don't really need me to guide you necessarily, because I'm not permanent in your life. You're going to need to build up a practice where your teacher is not guiding you. Are you guys okay with that? If I don't guide you during meditation? Okay. So I'll just do the chanting at the beginning and at the end. Okay. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanang Apivateyami Savakato Bhagavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Sanghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato อะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะกะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโตภะคะวะติ สัมมาสัมพุทโธมาควาโอตังมาควันนังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมาควตาธัมโมดามังนามาสามิสุปฏิปันโนมาควโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามิ You guys can chant. Go ahead. Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. So, any questions on anything that we've been talking about here?
Yeah, I have a question about, if I remember correctly, like in the Palicanan studying group, there's a description about the how to meditate. Just like if you breath in, long,
Mhm.
breath out. And to me, I feel like, do I have to do comparison like for yourself, like the breath? Oh, for instance, this is shorter than last one, or this is longer than last one. It's kind of the mind is coming to working. Is it expected, or we should not let mind?
Yeah, when that comes up in the Palikin English study group, I teach you which each of those statements mean. It's not what you think it is. What it means when he says, if your breath is long, know that it's long. If it's short, know that it's short. What he's basically saying is focus on the breath. And that's where your mind should be focused. That know if it's long or if it's short, meaning you're aware of the breath. Your mind's focused on the breath. That's what that means. So each one of those statements that he says, that's like me when I guide you guys, and I'm like, I say, develop a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath, not forced or controlled. Focus your mind on the breath, blah, 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 right? So I'm guiding you in the meditation, but then I stop and I just let you guys meditate, focused on the breath. And anytime you move off, cut it off and let it go and come back. So that's him guiding you guys into meditation. And then you need to be able to meditate where you're focused on the breath. And anytime it moves off, cut it off and let it go and come back. So if you watch one of those, you'll see me teaching you what each one of those statements mean. And what I've done with my guidance is I've consolidated it so that you can learn how to meditate with this consolidated guidance, where the Buddha is giving you the more elongated way of meditating. Mhm. It's kind of like when you first learn how to brush your teeth. Your parents were like, okay, take your toothbrush, put some water on it, put the toothpaste on it, put it in your mouth, go back and forth. They taught you all these steps. And when you first started meditating, you had to think about, or you first started brushing your teeth, you had to think about these things. But now you don't think about it anymore. You just bloop, 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 and you're done, right? So it's the same kind of thing with meditation.
And another question is, you say
Mhm. Yeah, just one place, just the sound or the sensation of air. That's your post or your pillar. And the analogy that the Buddha gives you is like if you had a post or pillar and there were 6 animals that were tied to it and they were pulling in all these different directions, and there's a rope tied around their neck. As they pull, they get to the end of the rope, it gets yanked back to the post or pillar. And if they do that enough where they're pulling and pulling and pulling and they get yanked back and yanked back, eventually they're just going to sit down by that post or pillar, right? So your mind's the same way, that it's going to be pulling and pulling and pulling, and you're yanking it back to the breath, which is the post or pillar. And if you do this enough, eventually your mind's just going to be calm and it's not going to pull in your day to day life anymore. Where in meditation, you'll still have thoughts even when you're enlightened, but in your day to day life, it's like, oh, there's a pair of shoes. They're really nice shoes. Do I need a pair of shoes? No, not really. Okay, let me just keep walking, right? Where when you're unenlightened, you're like, oh my gosh, pair of shoes. I need to get those shoes. Like, come on. And you maybe have 30 pairs already at home. Like, what do you need one more pair of shoes for? But the mind's trying to get pleasant feelings by buying another pair of shoes, right? So you need to be able to be aware your mind's pulling so you can yank it back. And that's what this meditation is helping you to be able to do. And if you use this analogy of the post or pillar and your mind's yanking, and you just yank it back and yank it back and yank it back and yank it back, eventually it'll be calm and still and steady.
yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. What's your name, by the way?
Linda.
Okay.
We
Yeah.
met.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. You came to Thailand. You've been very supportive to be able to help me. Yes. I didn't immediately recognize you, but now I remember. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. You went on the tour with me to the temples, right? Did you go on the tour? Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, okay. The experiencing the jhanas and the 4 stages of enlightenment. Oh, okay. Yeah. Hmm. Oh, yeah. We were encouraging you to go because yeah, you were like really pushing your time and people were encouraging you to go. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Your bus was leaving in like an hour and you were like, yeah, I got to go back to my hotel and get my stuff and I have to check out. We're like, you haven't been back to your hotel yet and you're an hour away from your bus. Like, we suggest you leave, right? Yeah, I remember. Yeah. Okay. Very well. Well, nice to connect with you here in California. I had a feeling that we'd met because you welcomed me to the Bay Area, so I kind of had a feeling. Yeah. Okay.
Really
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it's nice to be here. All right. So I'm going to end class by just thanking you guys. Thank you for your interest to learn and grow and develop. Tomorrow, I'm going to be starting with meditation, and then I'm going to teach the 3 poisons, the 3 unwholesome roots, or the 3 fires. This is what we're going to start with in the morning. And then after our break, I'm going to teach you the 5 precepts. After our lunch, I'm then going to teach you walking meditation. So this will be a really full day to learn a lot of different things. So perhaps I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good evening, okay? All right. Sawadee krap.